Yo, what's up, everybody? We're here for the Think Big podcast. I'm one of your hosts, Marlon Johnson. I'm hanging out with Sam Singh and Alejandro Alvarez, and I decided that today's a great day, and I'm gonna have a great time. And yo, Alejandro, bro, you're low key. I actually don't think I could like sit next to you on camera because you just look way too crisp right now. And Sam, like, even though he's pixelated, looks too freaking handsome. Like, bro, this is crazy, man. Like, you ever had that realization? Well, I know you guys haven't, but like everyone else, like I'm just having a moment where I'm realizing I'm the ugly friend. And like that's just not cool. Right? Like, damn, like I'm just
Bro,
gonna
you got
oh,
six pack, bro. Well, don't you have like an 8 pack or something, bro? We're Sam and I are struggling over here.
yeah. Well, I mean, apparently I have to have an 8 pack. I gotta have an 8 pack and a personality to keep up with y'all.
Yeah, if you
Y'all
take
just
off your shirt, it's over.
Yeah.
bro, this is insane. But yeah, I'm excited. All jokes aside, one, I'm grateful to be back here. Last week was freaking phenomenal listening to Sam break down the different tiers of mentorship. I was totally under the weather. So I was just like zombified, but I took down so many notes. And this week, we're going to be bouncing back in with a totally different conversation, which is really about overcoming fear and embracing risk. Because as entrepreneurs, this stuff is hard. Like entrepreneurship is not easy. Building a business is not easy. In fact, I found myself going through a bit of a study today, if you will. And as I was going through the studying, I was looking at different entrepreneurs who, quite frankly, have taken years to build what they build. Right? Like, you guys familiar with those boys at the School of Hard Knocks? I don't know what their name is, but they're the young guys that walk around with microphones and they'll walk up to entrepreneurs, successful people with nice cars or beautiful houses, and they'll just say like, "Hey, like, what did you do to become this rich? How much money have you earned? And what advice would you give to the next generation?" You guys familiar with those guys?
Yeah.
Awesome. Right. And funny enough, they've actually interviewed some of our friends. Like, we've actually seen them like stop some of our friends in Scottsdale, and it's like it's kind of cool. What you find is typically the gentlemen and women who answer the advice, there is a similarity in all advice, regardless of industry that it's coming from. And it's this. Jade, check this out. What's up, Jade? Check this out. The answer that they constantly get is this thing takes time. Get rid of that notion of an overnight success. In fact, the biggest worry that a lot of these multimillionaire, 100 millionaire, billionaires have is that they're concerned, like, listen, I'm afraid that your audience is going to see this. And because it only took me 30 seconds to answer, they're thinking it's only going to take them 30 days to build. Guys, I'm still in the process of building. I'm like 3-4 years into my real estate, not even real estate, into my entrepreneurial, into like being a business owner. And I'm constantly evolving. Like, in fact, Sam gave me a paradigm shift a few weeks ago where he said, bro, you're not a real estate investor, you're a business owner. And it's taking me time to even absorb that and to really get my own mind shifting and realizing, wow, he's absolutely right. And as a business owner, my main job is to give other people jobs. Go figure. So we're always evolving, and I just want to remind people of that as they're jumping into the Think Big podcast. But I'm excited about tonight's topic. I do want to say before we get started, like always, if you get value from this episode, this podcast in any way, shape, or form at any point, I ask that you do one favor and that you share this out with a friend. I want to grow this community. We want to share as much information as possible. I mean, Sam is like the modern day Robin Hood. He'll go out to these ridiculously expensive masterminds, soak up all the information, implement it, see what's actually useful, and then come back and just share the good stuff. So let's keep that going. But that only works if we see that we're getting, you guys got to sprinkle some honey on the man, like sprinkle some sugar on the man. And you do that by sharing it and leaving comments. So that's how we know this is valuable. That's how we know people are enjoying this. And that's personally what gives us, that's how you pay us. That's the social currency. So we're not asking you to put your credit cards away tonight. All right, Donabella, put your credit card away, Melissa. Instead, pay us with social currency by expressing if this is valuable, express that by sharing. Now, let's go ahead and jump into it. Where should we begin with tonight's conversation? Because overcoming fear and embracing risk is something that I know very well from my time as a parkour athlete. However, I'm curious as to how that applies or how y'all see it applying in business, and maybe what are some things that newer entrepreneurs should be made aware of, because my goal here tonight is to set the expectation for the sake of people being able to have expectation and reality meet so they don't give up too soon.
I want to start with this. You've got an interesting background. In parkour, it is safe to say that you could get severely injured or potentially die. Right?
Yes, sir.
And
Absolutely.
that's an extreme thing. And what I actually want to do is I want people to understand something that you taught me, and something that I didn't realize that I did, but I did it back in the day in my other industry. And it's something you and I did consistently very recently. And that is visualization of a risk. And so you and I actually want you to do this, man, because you and I did something really crazy very recently. And we had to visualize the hell out of it before we did it, probably for at least a day. And it was the riskiest thing we've probably ever done. You want to go ahead and talk about that?
100%. Because also, by the way, one of our brothers just joined us in that club yesterday. Darren in Hawaii.
Wait,
yeah.
That's so sick. All right, I'm gonna call him.
Darren's in Hawaii right now for real quick, guys. You see, I'm like a squirrel. Shout out to Kamohai and Tristan. Shout out to our amazing friends down in Hawaii who have put together an amazing community, built an amazing business, and are airing tonight on HGTV their new show that showcases them flipping homes and renovating properties out in Hawaii. I mean, we could not be more proud of them. That's airing tonight at 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. So we'll drop the link for that below. That's just, I don't even have I wasn't even ready to talk about that. I just wanted to share that because those two are phenomenal human beings. But our buddy Darren is in Hawaii, and he just did what Sam and I did a couple of weeks ago, which is he got into an airplane, flew up. He went to about 13,500 feet in the air and opened the door to jump out of the airplane. This is an activity that arguably can very easily lead to your death. And what's so crazy about this is it was his first time doing it. He did it because he felt inspired after us talking about our experience of jumping out of the airplane on our own solo with nobody strapped to our backs, just a parachute on our backs. And as Sam and I, we did this when we were down in Tampa, Florida, early this January. Shout out to Brad Romaine. And when we were doing this, we were taking this class, and on the ground floor, here's what they did. They didn't say, okay, don't worry, skydiving is safe. Don't worry, you're going to make it through alive. You're all winners. Here's your participation trophy. No, in fact, the first couple of moments of even signing waivers, the word death was highlighted in bold probably about 17 times on the first page, because they wanted to say, hey, you are taking on additional risk. Sure, there's potentially the most amazing experience on the end of this rainbow, on the end of this ride, but please understand, you are taking on so much more additional risk. Do you want to move forward? I wish people had to sign a waiver like that before getting into entrepreneurship. I think, in fact, everyone should sign some form of waiver like that with themselves. And a part of that, though, was they wanted us to really acknowledge what was about to happen. And so a part of acknowledging that was actually sitting down and visualizing and seeing the ways that everything could possibly go wrong. It wasn't just about looking at the ways it can go right. Because if it goes right, the truth is we don't need any contingency. If things go right, we don't need any additional tools. If things go right, we don't need anybody's help. It's when things go wrong, that's when we're looking at, I'm stuck in this hole, and how do I keep moving forward? So a part of our training, if you will, was to actually see the parachute malfunctioning. It was actually to see the strings getting tangled up. It was to actually imagine all of this in full detail. Feel yourself dropping after being caught by a little bit of drag. Feel yourself dropping again after you thought everything was okay, and figuring out how would you respond in that moment. If people built their business this way, I think they would be better prepared. And I can speak for myself. I know for myself, I would be better prepared had I thought of more contingencies and started to really protect myself against the downside, right? Arguably, risk is a part of the game, and it's not about risk avoidance, it's risk mitigation. And the only way we can mitigate it is to see it coming head on. So we visualize ultimately the worst case scenario, which is a practice I personally adopted from my parkour days. It wasn't just about seeing the move happen the way I anticipated. It was more about seeing. Is it cool if I tell a story? All right. One of my favorite things in parkour, I don't do this as much anymore. One of my favorite activities in parkour we called descents. And this was going to the top of a very tall building or a tall structure. Parking garages were some of our favorite things. And this would be climbing onto the outside of the structure and actually dropping yourself from level to level to level to level as quickly as you possibly can. And during this process, there's actually a moment where you are fully letting go, hands and feet from the wall, and you're now free falling down to the structure below you to catch on to essentially what is about a 1-inch lip on the side of the wall, and to get your hands back in to catch your body to lower yourself to the next descent. If you miss your hands or if you miss the footing, oftentimes you're taking a 50, 60, 70-foot drop down to earth. It is extremely high consequence, but here's the funny thing. Level of difficulty to actually do the motion, not hard at all. More mental, 95% mental. And so because it's so mental but not physically demanding, what can often happen at heights is you can begin to see without wanting to the worst case scenario. You could see yourself slipping off the edge. You could see a bird flying under your foot at the last second when you go to step on the ledge and you miss your slip, or a little bit of dust, and all the what ifs start to flash before your eyes. And here's what novice athletes try to do. They try to shake it off. I didn't just see that. No, that's not real. I didn't just see it. And what scares me about that when people do this, no, the deal's not going to fall apart. No, I didn't see that. What scares me about that is they're not acknowledging a potential reality. And because they're not acknowledging a potential reality, that potential reality is lurking in the dark, ready to pop up on them and steal their focus in the time of when we need them, right? In the critical moment where we need them to be fully attentive, that scary reality can pop up on them. Instead, what I would do was I would actually recognize, you know what, I am scared. I do feel that something is potentially dangerous. I actually want to live in my mind and do a simulation in my mind of that worst case scenario and say, well, you know, what happens if I were to miss my footing while dropping? How could I recover? And I would mentally go through the recovery in my mind, and I would build out the contingency. And by going through this, acknowledging that there is potential danger and also mentally preparing that recovery. And I might even find, you know what, that's actually a good recovery to practice before I even move forward with this motion, before I even move forward and do this deal. I should practice that recovery so I can build up even more confidence so I can keep my focus. Sometimes the practice of just acknowledging it would actually make it go away, and I didn't have to worry about my attention being stolen in the clutch moments of making the move. So I did this. I would actually visualize the worst case scenario in order to prevent it from sneaking up on me and flashing in on me in the middle of times where I need to be 100% present. Business is very, very similar. So many people only ever practice what if the conversation goes right. Practice what if the conversation goes wrong, and how can you recover? Practice your recovery. Be aware of that. Let's mitigate risk. So that's a practice I took from parkour. I still apply it in my business doings today, and it's been very helpful for progressing. It's been very helpful for getting me over what I think most people refer to as analysis paralysis, which is this I'm overthinking how to do it because I want it to be perfect. And by acknowledging like it's not going to be perfect, by acknowledging that there are worst case scenarios and just building a contingency, it gave me enough oomph to simply take action right here, right now, where I'm at. So I'm going to stop talking though, guys, because I mean, if you let me, I will just keep going. And that's what happens. I talk way too much, y'all.
Well, I want to highlight this because before we can go into overcoming fears, right? Alejandro, you talk to so many newbies, man. You lead all these Zooms and you teach so many people. What are common fears that you see new investors and new entrepreneurs have? Because I want to identify those before we can showcase how to overcome them.
What if I don't? What if I work for months and not get my first deal? That's one of the biggest fear. Having the uncertainty and not having the promise that they will succeed. That is the most fear I see, the most common fear I see from everyone.
Okay. Because you came into this industry and man, you've got an extremely tough background, right? You did not grow up in wealth. You did not grow up with a silver spoon. I mean, far from it, right? When you got into this industry, you were coming off of car sales, and I know you were crushing it in car sales, right? And that's
Mhm.
like, think about a safety net, right? A lot of people, they want to get into the industry, and this industry is hard, and they think like, if it's one thing to not be making money, and it's like if I'm a kid who's not making money and I go into real estate and it fails, like all that happens is I go back to not making money. Like it's my situation's not really changing much. You were in a different situation where you were making money, you were crushing it in car sales. Did you have that same level of fear? Because you're like, hey, if I start doing real estate, I'm not selling cars, I'm like putting this on the line. Was that fear present in your mind?
No, fortunately, no, because just the way I grew up, I kind of had a similar background like Marlon, like doing challenging things that a lot of people don't do because they're hard. So I've played tons of sports. I've had medals from track and field since I was like 6, 7 years old. I did somewhat of a little bit of parkour, but it was mixed in with dancing. It wasn't strictly parkour. So I've always done things that most people are not willing to do. And I've always realized coming into sales that I was going to defeat or at least chase the top person in that industry. And sure enough, I've always came top one in any of the businesses that I've worked in. Obviously, except real estate, because it's unlimited to how many things you can do in real estate.
Okay, so I want to isolate this, right? You say new investors, they have a fear of, essentially, it sounds like fear of failure, right? They spend all this time, they work, they work, they work, it doesn't pay out. I want to hit on a few other ones. One that I see a lot and I see this, and I think this was the actual reason why I've scaled and so many people haven't scaled. And that's the fear, not of failure, but of losing money. It is like a fear of loss, right? It's one thing to fail, like know that you just were shitty at what you tried and it didn't work out and you didn't make the money. It's another thing to put up money, right? Like I mentioned this in the chat. I'm going to drop $130,000 this year on mentorship and just coaching, just one-on-one coaching with a billionaire. It's going to cost me 130 grand total. And I've already spent 150K over the last 18 months. And so I understand, the danger and the risk and the fear of spending the money not to make the money back. But that's another thing that I see with a lot of people. They don't want to spend the money on the data, on the VAs, on the systems, on the processes. And I would say it is almost it is not almost, it is a requirement to grow in business to have to spend some money in some way, shape, or form. And so I think what ends up happening is I see people, they go on this segue, this kind of derailed tangent where they come into certain communities and because they're in a position where they may not have a ton of money, what they do is this: they do the free things. They do the JVs, the direct to agents, the expired listings, all these things that cost nothing, right? And here's the problem. They stay there for years. And what ends up happening is their entire businesses are built off of a Facebook group or a Facebook community and honestly, if they were removed from said community, if that Facebook group disappeared tomorrow, their businesses disappeared too. So I actually want to highlight this for people. I'm an advocate of start by maximizing the means that you have. You will get to a point in your business where like you have to overcome the fear of spending money and the fear of losing money. Guys, this past week, I dropped probably more money in one day reinvesting in the business than I've ever done. I sent out 2 wires. One was a small one comparatively. It was like 17 grand for systems development for one tiny little part of systems. And the second wire 2 hours later was for $117,000. That's a big gamble. It could go away. There was no there was no securement. It's not attached to real estate. It is like a dangerous risk for me to be able to put that back into my business. And I don't want people to think like I don't feel anything, or I'm at a point where like it's so removed where like sending a $117,000 wire means nothing to me. No, it was scary as hell. It was scary as hell. But all that's been able to happen is my financial thermostat over the last 2 years of being in entrepreneurship has grown. I see Marlon laughing. What's going on?
Well, bro, I'm laughing because I like that feeling of like I want to emphasize that and like let's talk about that because yeah, like we make money now, like and we make more money than we've ever made, right? Like I know each of you, I've spoken to you independently, and you all make a little bit more money now than you've made in the past. I know for me personally, like my W-2 career, I was at the place of like I barely was making $25,000 a year. So I mean, if I closed a $5,000 wholesale check, I was like ecstatic because that was more money in a single check than I've ever seen. And I remembered it was last year I had done one of the larger acquisitions for a flip that I have ever done. And I took out a loan. I went and borrowed money. I had a person, shout out to John, he lent me $343,000. Crazy. Like just so, and we had only met once actually. We literally he's out here local in Arizona. I went to his office. I sat down with him. We chatted for about an hour or two. And after that hour or two, I didn't even ask him for money. I just as I stood up to leave, I was like, hey, I got another meeting to go to. He says, hey, didn't you come to borrow money from me? I was like, yeah, but I was just getting to know you. And I just wanted to know more about you and kind of hear what was going on. And it was interesting. And he says, I like you. I want to do a deal with you. And he says, let's talk later. Calls me back at 10 o'clock that night. 10 o'clock that night. And says, how much money did you say you needed? I said, well, $343,000. He says, hey, if you could come back to my office right now, I'm kidding you not. We'll put together an agreement and I'll lend you the money. So I go back to his office at like 10:30 at night. I'm like, do you want anything, by the way? I pick him up a smoothie. He wanted a smoothie. I bring a smoothie to him. And Sam, he gives me the money and I buy a property in your silly state. I buy a property in California. And this was going to be a quick flip. This was over in Lancaster, California. And brother, do you know how terrified I was when I purchased that property that I was going to have as a quick flip? And I reached out to the tenants to find out what day they were leaving, and they said they weren't. I was like, bro, I owe $343,000 on this property of money I do not have. And I'm in a state that is arguably not very friendly to the guy like me and is going to protect those tenants in the house. And I was like, oh my God, I told this guy he was going to get his money back in like 2 months. I just put myself more than $250,000 of debt. And I'm responsible for getting this. Dude, not almost actually. Let me just be real. I cried about this deal. I cried. Like I was in my bedroom and I cried about this deal. But I kept going through it. And I thought about bailing. I thought about ways to, like, my mind started to flash the what ifs. I decided to follow through on this deal, to keep the conversation open, to go back to the seller and say, hey, can you help me with these people? You have a good relationship with them. And we were able to work everything out. It was a miscommunication. The seller told them that they can stay because she thought we wanted the property not vacant. She thought we wanted to keep the tenants in place. And so it was a misunderstanding. We communicated, we got through it. But oh my gosh, terrifying. Absolutely terrifying. And I want to remind people that this was after I had already done deals. I had already done flips. I had already made 6 figures inside of like projects. And it was still terrifying to think that this might go wrong. This might blow up in my face and I can be hurt right now. That I don't believe being afraid ever goes away. I would actually argue that it never goes away. And this is why high performers, I want everyone to listen to this, a characteristic, a habit of high performance is the habit of demonstrating courage. It's a habit. It is an activity, right? It is actually something that you can create and instill in yourself, the habit of demonstrating courage. So do me a favor. If this makes sense to you, in the comments, write down, I will be courageous. Like, put that in the comments, because courage, here's the difference between courage and like bravery, right? A person can be a brave idiot, which is they see a house on fire and they just run into it to go and try and save the grandma. Awesome. That's brave. But they can be an idiot because they don't understand that now they just put two human bodies in danger, right? Courage is the firefighter who actually is fully aware of the danger ahead and still steps in and prepares to step in to save that grandmother. High performers demonstrate the habit of always being courageous. So I love that. Sam says, I'll be courageous. Logan says, I'll be courageous. Donabelle says, I'll be courageous. Io says, I'll be courageous. Mark says, I'll be courageous. I love this because this is what your entrepreneurial journey will require of you like nothing else. It will require so much courage that you will be amazed. You will think you have developed all of the courage you could possibly develop. And then something new, bigger, and scarier will present itself to you at the next level. And you'll need to be like Abraham. You'll need to be courageous. So, Sam, all of that came when you said that you just cut a check for over $100,000. And I'm like, bro, I know that feeling. It is, oh my gosh, it is such, when people say like, you're so lucky, I want what you want. I'm like, I don't think you actually know what it is I have. I don't think you actually know how scary it is taking the risk and going and doing these deals and doing these transactions. And yeah, it's awesome when it all works out. But when you lose 60 grand, like, and this happened to me last year, we lost 60 grand on a deal. When you lose 60 grand and you just got to eat it because that's a part of the game, you have to be courageous enough to get back in and try again. Like, you got to be courageous to date again, to get the next deal, to pick yourself back up and recognize, okay, we made a mistake. Game's not over. This doesn't mean I'm not going to use private money ever again. This doesn't mean I'm never going to buy real estate ever again. This doesn't mean that the market is stupid. It just means I made a mistake. I bet and I lost. And now I'm going to get better. And the next time I'm back in the game, I'm going to make better choices because I now have new data. So, yo, Sam, I love this, man. Freaking love this conversation.
I love it, man. I love it, and that's so good. I want people to understand what they're afraid of. I want them to isolate and identify and explicitly tell themselves, like, this is actually what I'm afraid of, right? And I know for a lot of people, and I want you guys to understand that fear is not something that goes away. It just changes. It just changes. It's applied to different things. In the beginning, we jumped out of a plane. And there was an element of fear before we had done it. And then what happened is 24 hours, like in the 24 hours preceding us actually doing it, we prepped a million different times. And then by the time that I did it, I'd visualized it going well, it going wrong, every eventuality, every wrong way of, or whatever the hell could happen. We visualized all of it. By the time I jumped, like truly jumped, I'd already jumped 2,000 times in my head. And guess what? When I was up on the plane and the door flies open, and Marlon, you know that sound, it is loud. And when someone else jumps out of the plane, that vacuum sound of them getting sucked out, that's not quiet. It is not easy. Like and bro, I watched you jump out of the plane. I watched one of my best friends on earth jump out of the plane. And I'm just like, well, I hope he makes it down safe and sound. Like that was eerie and it was different. But when I got up to the door and I got up to the gate, it wasn't nearly as scary because I'd already done it in my mind 2,000 times. And now I'm going to go do it again and again and again and again. Guys, by the 20th time, it's not that the element of fear, natural fear, it'll still be there to a degree, but it'll minimize because I've become comfortable, because I've done it through repetition. I've prepped so many times. And I want you guys to understand that as you level up as entrepreneurs right now, it may be a fear of spending money. It may be a fear of, picking up the phone and dialing the seller because you don't want to get cussed out. It may be a fear of shooting the shot on a sub-2 deal because it's your first time doing it. And you're like wondering, oh my God, what if I screw everything up and the due on sale gets called and now I'm committing mortgage fraud or blah, 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 blah. Like as you do more, the fears start dissipating. And it's not that they go away fully. They'll just find something new to attach to. And so I want to do is I think this would be helpful, guys. I want to share, if it's okay with you, I want all three of us to share something, a fear that we truly have right now in the stages that we're at. And I'll start. Something about me, I have an honest fear of attaching my name to certain things because I've built a reputation of extremely high value, all the secret sauce. I don't have crap to sell you. I'm not a coach. I'm not a mentor. I'm not going to try to sell you into a mentorship or anything like that. And I value the importance and the significance and the trust that people have put into me. So Marlon, Alejandro, I am afraid of my next masterclass, and I'm afraid of dishonoring that trust. I'm afraid. And like, guys, and to be honest, like I should probably be putting out way more content. And one of the reasons, like I should, and I totally get that. One of those things holding me back is a fear of burning and losing that goodwill because I didn't keep the promise that I made to my audience. So that's a fear that I have. It has nothing to do with money. Ironically, if I made more content and sold more stuff, I'd actually make more money right now, but I'm afraid of losing the trust that I have with my people. So that's a fear for me currently. Alejandro, what's one that you have right now?
Is this based off business or just anything?
Anything.
I would say the biggest fear is not having enough time. That's it. It's just time. And I believe that's why I work really, really hard every single day. And when I say hard, it's not just working, doing something. It's working towards taking the specific steps to achieve my goals. And I act like there's never no tomorrow. I work every single day like there's no tomorrow because my biggest fear is the time, and I'll give you some context. How long does my mom have on this planet? How long does my grandma have on this planet? I want to have enough time where I can show them the life that they've never seen on the other side, because we all been there, living under a home made out of aluminum, under the hot sun, growing up with no shoes, stepping on freaking sharp rocks. So I want to be able to have enough time where, my grandma, she's building a home in Dominican Republic. She's building a home in the countryside, and she sends me pictures and videos. And hey, I want to send some funds so I can put some cabinets here, so I can put this window here, and I still have a business to run. So I'm like, hey, grandma, I'm going to send you this month, this month, but I want to have enough time. I want to make sure she gets to see that home fully built where she can sleep in there for years and years, for as long as she wants. And same thing with my mom. She jokes around, but she's like, hey, when are you going to buy me a Mercedes SUV? When are you going to buy me this Coach bag or all this stuff? And I'm just laughing, right? So, but I know that's something she would love. And it's not just based on material stuff, but that's something it's just the time. That is my biggest fear. So every time I go to sleep to bed, I want to make sure that I tell myself that, yeah, man, you did everything you could today. And even for me too, like, how much time do I have? I don't know. We all humans have an expiration date. We just don't know the exact date. It could be tomorrow. You can literally you can go on a car drive. It could be in a car accident. That could be it. Now, I don't fear death. I just fear the time. Give me enough time to make sure that I want to be able to physically see my mom and grandma enjoying that moment. That's it.
Bro, I love that. That's awesome. And I'll share my worry, my concern real quick. By the way, actually, guys, like in the comments, leave a like, leave a fire emoji if you're liking this, because most people don't get on here and share like the things that they're concerned about. Typically social media is way more about just look at me, look at how awesome I am, look at how amazing my life is, and here's every highlight reel that's ever occurred, because I don't have worries or bad days. So if you appreciate the transparency and the honesty, I know I personally do. Like, these are my brothers, and I love that I get to know more about them every single time we have a conversation. For me, the worry that I have, my biggest worry, and it's kind of embarrassing to admit, I'm afraid of letting people down after they have an expectation of me. And I say this to mean I'm pretty self-aware to know that, like Sam, I go out and I build really good reputation with people, and I bring value, and I progress and I get better, and I start to establish myself for some people as an authority inside their world. And so I become something like a mentor. I become something like a coach. I become something like a rock in their world. I'm just being honest, right? And my concern is that when I'm struggling, I'm afraid to tell people and show people that I'm struggling because I became the rock for them to base their foundation on. And now if I start to shake, I'm worried that it will cause their amazing progress to be derailed because I couldn't get it together. And so that becomes a worry of mine of, well, where do I go to get the help that I need without burdening the people who are relying on me to help them? And I want to continue to be able to serve them, and I just don't want to let them down. And that's really something like that bothered me for a long time. And thankfully, I have amazing friends who I look at, like Sam, like Alejandro, where I look at these men who are strong enough to have their own foundation as well, that they're not reliant on me and that they're building with me, not on me and not from me. And so I can go to them with my problems. This is why I join masterminds. However, there are still times where I struggle and I don't want to. I'm afraid to show that I'm struggling sometimes. Just being honest, right? Like, so that's my worry because I don't want to lose the amazing relationships. I optimize life. Everyone optimizes for different things. Some people optimize to grow the biggest empire in the world. Some people optimize to be the most artistic in the world. I optimize for relationships. My life is absolutely, I would trade everything I own, every asset I own, if it meant the preservation of the most meaningful relationships in my life without literally there isn't a second thought to it. So the thought of potentially losing relationships due to my incompetence scares me. And which is funny because if anyone's ever listened to Dan Martell, he'll say, if you want to become rich, become lazy. If you want to become wealthy, be incompetent. And I'm like, well, I got some incompetence. So, yeah, it's an interesting paradox. I am going to say this, though. Speaking your worries out loud, there's a magic behind it. Because even as I heard myself say it out loud, it's almost like my brain started to tell me why what I'm worried about isn't real. Why it's an illusion. The things that scare us are an illusion. So I appreciate everyone that was brave enough to share in the chats some of the things that they're worried about, right? Like Mac shared that his biggest fear is being a disappointment to his friends and family. And hopefully as you type that out, Mac, and I know you, Mac, you're a freaking hard worker. You're always showing up for your family. Like, kidding me? You show up for what you do. I hope as you wrote that, you started to realize, man, that's not even real. That doesn't even need to hold me down. Right? Deborah says the biggest fear is the fear of failure. Right? And like when you think about what is failure, and hopefully y'all don't mind me kind of talking about this out loud, but when you think about what is failure, failure isn't messing up. Failure is messing up and staying down. If you get back up after any experience, you didn't fail, you learned. So I love and appreciate y'all for sharing these. But I'm gonna pass the mic back over because Sam and Alejandro, you guys know if you don't take the mic from me, I will just keep talking. I love talking to our people. Like, I love this community. By the way, the podcast is growing. I love how many people are on here tonight.
Yeah, I got you, man. And our engagement's phenomenal tonight. I actually want to hit on this. I want everyone to realize, everyone who put a fear in the chat, and I read through all of them. I want you to all realize that your fears that you've all like openly claimed are also your power if you just repackage them. Everyone said, like, a lot of people said something to the effect of, I'm afraid of letting down my family. Like, the reality is that fear right there is your fuel. And a lot of people, what I've constantly realized is when people have a fear, very often the fear itself is usually not irrational. I'm afraid of letting down my family. I'm afraid of not being there for my kids. Great. if you actually keep that front and center in your mind, you can create a business that solves that all day. And the problem that happens is I see entrepreneurs who they miss out on time with family and they miss out on time with all these things, right? Or they're afraid to take, and I want to pivot into the next kind of little segment, which is risk, right? Fear is one thing. I'm afraid of all these things. The reality is you have to embrace risk to overcome a lot of that stuff. It is the requirement for me to have overcome spending 117 grand honestly on a business gamble is I have to, the only way I can get over it is overcoming in by taking on that risk and actually doing it at least one time and seeing what happens, right? And if your fear is, hey, I want to be with I'm afraid that I'm not going to be with my kids enough. And they're going to grow up with an absent father. Okay. And because if you guys don't know, I was raised by a single mom. So I would hate for my kids to have an absent father because I didn't have a father. That is a legitimate fear for me. But guess what? The risk that I have to take in business, the payoff of that risk is going to be me making more money, me being able to hire people, me putting in systems and processes that allows the business to run on its own. And guess what all that risk entails, or what is a byproduct of me just owning that risk? Me getting all my damn time back and being a present freaking father. And I want everyone to realize that a lot of times the fears that you have, coupled with the risk that you're afraid of taking, ironically, the risk that you're afraid of taking is the answer to your fear. And it's the weirdest freaking thing. And Marlon, you highlighted this, man. People, they run away from identifying or claiming or opening up about their fears, especially publicly, because, our society, especially, I'm going to be very honest here, especially to men aren't encouraged to share their fears. Not in Western society, right? Not in Western culture, and hell, not even in like Asian culture, traditional Asian culture. Hell no. So many parts of Western society in Central and South America as well, it is very masculine, right? We have masculinity as a thing, and men can't open up about fears. They can't open up about the risk they're afraid of taking. But the reality is it's critical. It is completely critical, because if you don't own it, identify it, claim it publicly, how the hell are you going to put yourself in uncomfortable situations to solve it?
It's honestly, it's like it's one of those things where it's like this. Oh man, like it's the actual scary stuff. Like it's doing the actual, like so many people can do the thing that like other people perceive as scary that doesn't actually grow you. And I love what you said, bro. Like the fear is your fuel. I wrote that down. Like that needs to be on a t-shirt. Like that should absolutely, it's true. Like the things that you're worried about is going to send you into where you need to be. And that's the risk, right? Because again, we're now going into the thing that can hurt us. Like the reason you're afraid is because there is an acknowledgement that this can hurt me. Right? Like having that uncomfortable conversation, investing that money, putting it all on you, betting on yourself, telling, could I share with you one of the, here's a worry that I don't ever actually think I've ever said out loud to anybody else. Actually, even as I'm saying this, like I'm already second guessing saying it, but now I feel like I have to because I already opened the bag. Oh, damn, this is hard.
You're in it too deep, man. You got to go.
Yeah, this is why I should not talk. This is why I don't like being live all the time. All right, well, no, seriously, like one of the scariest things I ever had was being in a relationship and knowing that it's my role and responsibility to provide, and being afraid to tell the person, you can count on me. Go ahead and stop. I'll take care of everything else. Because I was afraid of what if I messed up? And I truly did get someone to follow me. And as an entrepreneur, this is actually one of my biggest worries with hiring people and bringing people onto the team is, what if you do follow me and I lead you out into the desert to die because I couldn't find the oasis for us? And when I even listen to myself say that, all I hear myself saying is, you're looking for an excuse to be lazy. You're looking for an excuse to not get it done. Because the truth is, to your point, right? Like that worry becomes the fuel. That's actually when I hired my first employee. Bro, I thought I was going to do less work. I started working harder than I ever worked before. I was like, I need to make sure that they can support their family. I need to make sure that they can eat. And it's the same level of responsibility. It's the same risk that actually gets us moving. Risk actually, funny enough, they had an experiment. I'm going to tell you all this interesting story. They got these mice. These scientists get mice and they put them inside of a cage. And they want to see how much motivation can a mouse drive up when it's moving towards something at once. So they take a starving mouse and they put some cheese in front of them, and they put some fans to start to waft the cheese smell towards the mouse. And on the mouse's tail is a little string attached to a sensor that's telling how hard it's pulling. So if you can imagine this, the mouse's tail is hooked up, and the more the mouse pulls, the more this machine registers that, okay, this is essentially the motivation that the mouse has to try and get that cheese. Make sense? They measured when the cheese was there. Then they did another experiment with the same mice, the same group, and they put the cheese in front with the fan wafting the air in, and then they put a cat behind them and wafted the smell of the cat towards them. We found that the mice pulled a lot harder when there was a cat behind them and not just cheese in front of them. This shows that our motivation, our capacity to do work is actually increased when there's a risk involved. That we actually require risk as human beings, as creatures of growth. We require risk in order to open up the next level of performance. So I love that the title of this today is Embracing Risk. Not avoiding it, embracing it. How are you embracing risk? Such a good topic, guys. Such a good topic.
I want to ask this.
I'm curious for you, and I'm just curious, right? Within embracing risk, is there how are you? Let me ask you this question, and this is a serious question because I do believe you can take on too much risk too soon. How are you measuring as an investor, as an entrepreneur? How are you measuring the amount of risk that you take on and when it's appropriate, how much to take on at an appropriate level? If perhaps you're not a part of a community, you don't have a mentor, you don't have somebody in your world kind of seeing all the decisions you're making and really the buck stops with you. How are you making sure that you don't take on so much risk that you leave yourself totally burnt and screwed, unable to play the game again tomorrow if it all fails? Do you have some safeguards or some fail safes, or even a set of rules you follow for yourself, for either of you? I'm curious to know that question because personally I have my own way, but I don't know if it's scientific that other people can necessarily mimic it, but I'm happy to share it.
Yeah, let's do this. Alejandro, I'm actually really curious on how you would handle that.
For me, it's different. It's going to depend on the person. It's going to depend completely on the person, who you are. I feel like if you you're calculating based off your current beliefs. So if you push a little bit further, you might be able to find someone new or a brand new skill that's going to help you push forward a little bit more forward. And I think if I had to sit back and be like, okay, in my mind, the worst case scenario, all goes to shit and I go broke, which I've been in that position before. And like Jim Rome said, it's, becoming a millionaire. It's not the money you have in your account. It's who you become as a person. The person that made the million is who you are. And he didn't say word for word like that. So Jim Rome is definitely a legend. So apologies, but look it up. It's something along those lines. And as long as I have great intentions of what I'm doing, I'm going to go for it. If there's something that I feel is I'm not just going to be like, okay, you know what? Let me go take on this $1 million property. Maybe this property is going to be I don't know, $50,000 a month alone. I know I am not prepared to take something on like that. But if it's something different, that's a little bit over my comfort zone, I'm going to push it there. So I would probably, if we had to put this into a meter per se, let's say 60% is my my limit. I'm going to push it to 75, 70, 72, 73, just to see what happens. It's the same thing when you go to the gym, when you're working out. Your PR is 50, but when you get someone to spar you, you're no longer afraid to go to 70, because if you fail, you have someone to hold you, to help you. But you keep pushing. Next thing you know, you're doing 60s, very easy. Next thing you know, you're doing 65, and then you get to 70, and then you get to the 100. Like, keep pushing. It's the same thing with the thermostat quote. That thing was it Ed Milet? Like, if you, with the temperature of the thermostat, if it's at 60 and you go to 80 and something along those lines. But I'm always going to push myself a little bit over to what I believe my limits are, because that's the only way I can find a new skill for myself, or a new version of myself. I love that. Hopefully that made sense. I don't know if that went all over the place.
Yeah, it's interesting. You actually hit on something I wanted to hit on. I want to I'm going to highlight this. And if you guys didn't catch it, especially with the weightlifting side, it's basically, he talks about progressive overload, right? And progressive overload is, of course, Marlon has the guy with the gym upstairs. Progressive overload is simple, right? It's not every time you go into the gym and you crush your workout, the next time you're going to just, in very small increments, increase the weight, the stress, the pressure, right? So your body has enough resistance for it to, feel the pain and break down muscle fibers, but still be able to come back from it. And that's the game, right? It's by adding on pressure and stress and resistance, but you still have to be able to come back from it. And this is such a huge thing. And this is the two things that I view risk this way, guys. I'm a huge advocate, and this is something that I always have to check myself on. And this is actually what I use as a filter for people around me. And that's, are you showcasing extreme ignorance or arrogance? And those are the two things that will kill you. Those will absolutely kill you. And I'm going to talk about my time working for the federal government. And this was something that was taught to me by a mentor. And in that line of work, you could die. You could actually die. And they taught me this very important thing, where it's, if you go into a situation where your life is potentially on the line, if you go into it blind, you are ignorant. If you don't know what the room looks like, if you don't know what's going to happen, if you don't know who's behind that door, and sometimes you may not be able to know, but it's your job to do everything you can to find out. In as little time as you have, as much time as you have, it is your responsibility to pay down your ignorance debt. You have to know. You have to get the data. So do not go into anything with extreme ignorance. We don't do that stuff where we just put a blindfold on and, throw a dart hoping to hit a bullseye. That's what kills you. Second, extreme arrogance. Guys, no matter what, one of the reasons why I love these two guys, and you guys will see us post on social media and things will look like wins and they'll look happy and we'll have confidence. But one thing that neither of us has, any of us has, is true arrogance. And arrogance is this faulty, delusional hubris, which just means it's an old word for pride, where we think that just because it's us, it will work. That's a huge filter for me. And I have to check myself on that, is making sure I never get into a position where I think I'm going to win because it's me, because there's no one better. There's no one stronger. There's no one smarter. There's no one in the marketplace who can compete with me. No, the reality in my view of the world is I'm not the best. I'm not the smartest, the strongest, the most capable. I'm not any of these things. I'm not the most of anything. And I'm also probably not the worst of anything. I am very aware that I don't know what I don't know. And I'm not as good as I may think I am on a good day. Don't go into any situation with extreme ignorance or extreme arrogance, because those two things will freaking kill you. That's part one for me. That is like critical. And the second part is, guys, this is why I pay for mentorship. Guys, my first year of real estate, like almost 90% of the profit that I made, I did not take home. I actually reinvested it in mentorship and masterminding and getting myself into bigger rooms. Why? Because it's going to take me 20, 30, 40, 50 years to pay down that ignorance debt, right? I want to go and learn from the folks who've taken the risk. Why is that Marlon and I felt safe jumping out of that plane? One, because we always knew that we were going to do it. But two, truly, because we spent an entire day prior surrounded by people who had jumped not one time or two times, but thousands of times. We paid someone to give us their wisdom. So the reality is this, guys. Risk is required for growth, right? Risk, resistance, stress, pain, it's all required for growth.
Mhm.
Don't go into it with ignorance. Don't go into it with supreme arrogance because it will kill you. Utilize the people around you who have the answers because they've done it. The wisdom is a thing for a reason, right? And then I would say, honest to God, this is so truly, truly, truly important, is if you can help it, don't do it alone. That's another huge thing. So, Marlon, it's yours, man.
Yeah, no, dude, you hit the nail on the head, and I just want to highlight something because I know sometimes what people think they heard and what you actually said are two different things. And you mentioned there was an adjective, extreme. There is a level of ignorance that a person's going to have, like the level of it, right? Like you've got to be ignorant. Like it's what was Steve Jobs? What was the word for reality distortion? Right? There's a level of reality distortion, and there's a level of like you believe you will make it happen, but a level of it, not so much of it that you are blind to the truth. You are blind to the actual problems and the actual work that needs to be done. This is so important. And the fact that like you put such a neat bell on it, by a neat ring on it, by saying don't do it alone. Because I have trusted advisors. Like I've already had the conversation with each of you independently that if I ever start getting out of pocket, I already have given y'all permission to call me out on it. And that means if you say something, if you say, Marlon, yo, you need to chill out, no matter how pissed off I might be at you in that moment, I will sit home and I will reflect and I will realize, why did those guys say that to me? These guys have my best interest in hand. These guys are looking out for, I must not see something that should be important, that would be of a massive disservice to me if I cannot begin to see it. So I thought what you just said, man, of like having the people around you, so wildly important. So wildly important. And I'm going to say this, though. The final thing about embracing risk is being confident, trusting that I have a affirmation. I know you guys are, Sam, I know you're not a big affirmation dude. Alejandro, I don't know how much of affirmations you do. I do one affirmation for me, and it's just, I'm a forgetting machine. So I need ways to constantly remind myself of the character of Marlon Johnson, of Mindset Marlon that I'm creating. And one of those affirmations is that I have trust that whatever I do, it will work out if I bet on myself. I trust that if I bet on me to find a way, I will find a way. That if I'm all in, I will figure it out, or I will die trying. And if I die trying, I don't have any worries anymore. These problems don't mean anything anymore. I'm not here. But if I'm here and I'm betting on me, that's the best bet I know how to make. Because I will go and I will find the Samsings of the world. I will find the Alejandros of the world. I will go and I will read whatever book I need to read. I will go and get the answers. I will become better. I'm aware of that. So tonight was a fun conversation. I really enjoyed this one. I really enjoyed the audience participating in the way that y'all did. Anthony, Donabella, Catherine, John, everyone showing up in the chats, in the comments. Seriously, freaking amazing. I just want to say thank you. And before we wrap it up here tonight, I do want to remind you guys about something special that is happening that is nothing to do with us, but it has something to do with some amazing, wonderful human beings that are friend of ours that are down in Hawaii. That is Kamahai and Tristan. They are going to be on HGTV tonight. Their new show is premiering at 9 p.m. Arizona, 9 p.m. Eastern. So that's going to be 6 p.m. So that's coming up in what, like an hour? It's coming on in 1 hour. So if you still have cable television, go on to HGTV tonight, watch it. These folks are the real deal. Kamahai and Tristan are some OGs that I've watched them get into this business about 3.5, 4 years ago, and they just have worked their butts off. They did it with family, they did it with kids, they did it going through building a marriage and doing all the things that we normally use as excuses for why it can't be done. They did it with that, and they are just happy to be able to share everything. I mean, they are the most open book. I cannot speak highly enough of these people. So go and check out Kama and Tristan tonight. Make sure you guys show them some love, share on Instagram. Don't even worry about sharing the Think Big podcast tonight. It would make my heart amazing. Like, it'll just fill if you share their TV show tonight. Just go out there and just watch and support and love on them as much as you can, because they deserve it. So on that note, we will be back here next Tuesday for another episode of Think Big. In fact, guys, I might be traveling next week. I'll be on a plane next week, flying out to California, getting ready for the run across America. So I actually might not be on the Think Big podcast next week unless there's Wi-Fi on the airplane, but I will be up in the air. I believe at 3:00 is my flight. So we'll see if I land in time to come back and come on to the show. But like always, we appreciate y'all. We love you. And let us know in the comment section whatever you want to see us talk about in the future.